A massive stone temple stands on a hill in Turkey, built before the invention of farming. This is Göbekli Tepe, and its existence shatters the story we tell about human history. By the end of this journey, you will understand how a single archaeological site is forcing us to rewrite the entire narrative of civilization. What compelled hunter-gatherers to move 20-ton stones, and why was their masterpiece deliberately buried for millennia? The answers suggest our drive to create meaning is what truly makes us human. What do you think is the most important ingredient for building a society? That hill in southeastern Turkey held a secret for nearly 10,000 years. In 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt arrived, drawn by a simple but powerful hunch. The local farmers knew the place as Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill, and they often turned up strange flint tools while plowing their fields. Previous surveys had noted the site, but they misread the large, weathered stones poking from the earth as nothing more than the markers of a Byzantine cemetery, a few centuries old at most. Schmidt looked at those same stones and saw a different story written in the landscape. He began to dig. What his team uncovered was not a graveyard from the medieval era. As they carefully brushed away the soil, the tops of enormous T-shaped limestone pillars emerged. These were not naturally occurring. They had been quarried, shaped, and transported from a nearby valley. And they were not standing alone. They were arranged in clear, deliberate circles. As the excavation went deeper, the true magnitude of the find came into focus. The pillars were not blank monoliths. They were covered in detailed, breathtaking artistry. The stone surfaces were alive with carvings of foxes, scorpions, cranes, and boars, a menagerie of the ancient world frozen in limestone. The tools found alongside these pillars were not iron or bronze, but chipped flint, simple blades and scrapers from the very dawn of human technology. This was the critical clue that turned a curious discovery into a paradigm-shattering revelation. The site was not a village. There were no signs of permanent homes, no hearths for daily cooking, no refuse pits for domestic waste. This was something else entirely, a place built not for living but for gathering, a ceremonial site, and the carbon dating of organic material placed its construction squarely in the pre-pottery Neolithic period, around 9,600 years before the Common Era. Let that time frame sink in. This complex was built a staggering 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and a full 5,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. The builders were not farmers living in settled towns. They were, according to everything the textbooks said, nomadic hunter-gatherers. This posed an immediate and profound contradiction. How could small, mobile bands of people, constantly searching for their next meal, possibly coordinate the labor to quarry, move, and erect these multi-ton pillars? How could they spare the time and resources for such a non-utilitarian project, one that offered no direct help in finding food or shelter? The discovery at Göbekli Tepe presented archaeology with a fundamental riddle. It suggested that the human impulse to create meaning, to gather for something beyond mere survival, might be the very engine that sparked civilization itself. The temple on the hill was not a product of an established society. It appeared to be the blueprint for one. Göbekli Tepe did not just add a new chapter to history, it ripped the entire book in half and started a new one. For over a century, archaeologists and historians have taught a beautifully logical story of human advancement. It goes like this. Step 1. The Neolithic Revolution. Some clever individuals figured out how to plant seeds and domesticate animals. This was agriculture. Step 2. With a reliable food supply, people no longer needed to wander. They built permanent villages. Step 3. These settled communities produced surplus food, which meant not everyone had to farm. specialists emerged: artisans, leaders, priests. Step 4. With this new social complexity and spare time, humanity finally had the capacity to pursue higher things like monumental architecture, organized religion, and art. It is a clean cause and effect ladder. First came full stomachs, then came the gods. This narrative is so deeply ingrained it feels like common sense. But the stones of Göbekli Tepe tell a different story, one where the steps are not just out of order, but where the entire premise is backwards. The scientific evidence is unambiguous. Meticulous radiocarbon dating of organic materials from the deepest layers places the earliest construction circles at around 9,600 years before the Common Era. In the surrounding region, concrete evidence for the systematic cultivation of crops like wheat or the herding of animals like sheep does not appear until centuries, even a full 1,000 years later. The people who carved those immense pillars with flint tools were not farmers tending fields. They were foragers living off the land, hunting wild gazelle and gathering wild grasses and nuts. This fact alone is a seismic shock to the traditional timeline. It means the most ambitious architectural project of its era, possibly the world's first large-scale temple, was built by people who supposedly lacked the social structure, the labor organization, and the economic surplus to even attempt it. This forces a revolutionary question. What if we have the equation inverted? What if the desire to build, to create a shared sacred space, came first? Imagine the scenario: hunter-gatherer bands across the landscape, perhaps related by kinship or shared stories, begin to gather at a special location. Maybe it was already a site of significance. They decide to create something permanent there, something awe-inspiring to honor the forces of their world, the animals they depended on, the cycles of life and death. To achieve this vision, they needed something unprecedented: sustained cooperation. People had to be brought together, not just for a seasonal hunt, but repeatedly for a project that spanned generations. Feeding these large, recurring gatherings of workers and celebrants would have been a monumental challenge in itself. The wild resources around the hill would have been quickly depleted. So a new necessity was born: the need for a predictable, controllable food supply to support the builders and the rituals. This is the Cathedral first theory. The spiritual and social ambition to create Göbekli Tepe may have been the very pressure cooker that forced the invention of agriculture. People settled not because they had farms, but because they had a temple to build, and farming became the tool to make that possible. It suggests civilization was sparked not by the practicality of full stomachs, but by the human yearning for collective meaning, a need so powerful it reshaped our entire relationship with the natural world. The sheer physicality of Göbekli Tepe is what makes its early date so difficult to comprehend. To stand before one of these enclosures is to witness an architectural marvel that defies the simplicity we assign to its time. The site is not a single structure, but a series of at least 20 distinct rings, each one a sacred precinct carved from the very hill itself. Picture a circle defined not by a fence, but by a ring of colossal, T-shaped limestone pillars, each one a monolith weighing as much as 20 tons. That is the weight of 2 full-grown elephants, and at the heart of each circle, 2 even more massive pillars stand sentinel, like silent giants overseeing a ritual space. The tallest of these central pillars rises over 5.5 meters high, taller than a modern 2-story house. The process of creation is a story written in stone and sweat. The builders identified the perfect limestone bedrock in a quarry just a few hundred meters away. Using only stone hammers and antler picks, they painstakingly carved these gigantic blocks from the living rock. Then, without wheels, without metal tools, and without domesticated animals like oxen to pull them, they moved these 20-ton stones up the slope of the hill. How? The most likely method involved a combination of wooden rollers, ropes made from plant fibers, and the coordinated muscle of hundreds of people, heaving in unison to inch each pillar into its ordained place. Once positioned, they had to be lifted and set upright into sockets carved into the bedrock floor, an engineering puzzle that required not just brute strength, but sophisticated knowledge of leverage and balance. But these are not blank slabs. Look closer. The distinctive T-shape is now understood by researchers to be something profound, a highly stylized human form. The top bar of the T is a head gazing out across the millennia. On several of the pillars, you can see delicate carvings of arms bent at the elbow, with hands meeting over the center of the pillar, as if in a gesture of reverence or authority. Some even have belts and loincloths depicted. These are not abstract symbols, they are representations of beings, perhaps ancestors, gods, or mythic participants in the ceremonies held here. This transforms the enclosures from simple stone circles into something far more complex, a gathering of silent, watchful figures. This intentional, symbolic architecture reveals a mental world of stunning sophistication. To conceive of this design, to execute it over generations, required a shared belief system so powerful it could command such a staggering investment of labor. It required planners to direct the work, organizers to feed and coordinate the builders, and artists to translate belief into enduring imagery. This level of social coordination was something we never dreamed hunter-gatherer societies were capable of achieving. Göbekli Tepe is not just a temple, it is fossilized proof of a social revolution, a testament to the human capacity to come together for a purpose greater than survival, and in doing so, to lay the very first stones of civilization itself. These stone giants are not silent. They speak through a language of animals, a menagerie etched into their very skin. Walk around any of the central pillars and you enter a prehistoric art gallery, a bestiary carved in stone. The surfaces are alive with foxes slinking along the limestone, snakes coiling in intricate patterns, and powerful wild boars captured in mid-motion. Cranes and ducks take flight while scorpions and lions stand as symbols of potency and danger. Notice what is missing. There are no docile sheep, no harnessed oxen, no images of cultivated fields. Every creature depicted is wild, untamed, and central to the hunter-gatherer world. This is not a simple picture book of daily life. The absence of clear hunting scenes or domestic scenes tells us these carvings served a far deeper purpose. They are a symbolic code, a permanent text created by people who did not yet have writing. So what message were they preserving across the generations? One compelling theory sees these animals as totems. In this view, each creature might represent a different clan or social group that journeyed to this sacred hill. Imagine separate bands, each identifying with the cunning fox or the powerful bull, coming together in a grand alliance. Their shared project, building these monumental rings, would have been a physical testament to their unity, with each group leaving its symbolic signature on the pillars. Another interpretation looks to the spiritual realm. These powerful, often dangerous animals could be guardian spirits, or representations of deities that ruled a world where nature and the supernatural were inseparable. The carvings transform the enclosures into a liminal space, a portal where the community could interact with these forces. Perhaps the most intriguing idea is that these images are fragments of a lost mythology. They might illustrate a creation story, chart the path of a shamanic journey, or map a cosmology that explained humanity's place in the universe. The dense, overlapping carvings could be a narrative frozen in time, a story told and retold during gatherings, with the pillars serving as the ultimate storybook. This transforms our understanding of the site's function. Göbekli Tepe was likely far more than a temple for quiet prayer. It was a theater for ritual, a canvas for myth, and an archive for collective memory. The animal code ensured that every time people returned, the stories remained, etched in stone, waiting to be remembered and renewed. this communal text provided a shared identity and a common spiritual anchor, the very glue that held a complex, cooperative society together long before cities or kings. The silent stone figures hold a deeper secret in their very shape. Look at a pillar and you see a massive T, but the builders saw something profoundly familiar. They saw themselves. The crossbar is a stylized head gazing eternally forward, while the shaft of the pillar forms a body. On several of these monoliths, this abstraction becomes explicit, with delicate arms carved in relief, bent at the elbow, and hands meeting over where a heart would be. Some even feature belts and loincloths. These are not mere posts holding up a roof. They are highly stylized human forms, frozen in a gesture of reverence or authority. This transforms the entire space. You are not standing in a ring of stones, you are standing in a council of stone beings. The question of who or what they represent opens a window into a lost worldview. They could be venerated ancestors, watchful guardians linking the living community to their lineage. They might be deities or powerful spiritual beings, their stone bodies serving as permanent vessels for presence during rituals. The consistent, non-negotiable form tells us this image was central to their belief system, an idea so important it was worth moving mountains of stone to realize. The arrangement of these figures adds another layer of meaning. Each enclosure typically features a ring of these T-shaped pillars, but at the center, two even larger, more elaborately carved pillars stand facing each other. This pairing suggests a duality, perhaps a foundational concept in their cosmology, representing complementary forces like sky and earth, life and renewal, or the seen and unseen worlds. The architecture itself becomes a three-dimensional model of their universe, with the central pair overseeing a sacred hierarchy. Some researchers looking at the site's orientation have noted possible alignments with celestial bodies, like the star Sirius or the rising of certain constellations. If true, these stone figures could also be eternal markers, connecting the rituals performed within the circle to the grand, predictable cycles of the heavens above. This synthesis of human form, cosmic order, and monumental effort is staggering. It means the builders were not just stacking rocks, they were encoding their entire understanding of existence into the landscape. The unified design, repeated across multiple enclosures built over centuries, speaks of a shared cultural idea so powerful it could coordinate the labor of hunter-gatherer bands from across the region. A person from a group living days away would arrive at Göbekli Tepe and immediately understand the meaning of the pillars, their placement, and their carvings. This shared symbolic language was the true foundation of their collaboration, a mental blueprint that made the physical blueprint possible. These silent figures are the ultimate expression of a collective identity, a testament to the human need to make meaning visible, to carve our questions and beliefs into the very bones of the earth. The animal bones tell a story of immense celebration. Scattered throughout the fill around the stone circles, archaeologists have unearthed not just a few remains but vast deposits, the remnants of feasts on a truly staggering scale. The bones are from wild animals, primarily gazelle, alongside massive aurochs, the wild ancestors of cattle and wild sheep. The sheer volume suggests these were not family meals, but communal banquets capable of feeding hundreds, perhaps even thousands, of people at a time. This is our clearest window into what actually transpired at Göbekli Tepe. It was not a silent monastery, but a vibrant, periodic gathering place, a regional cult center that drew nomadic bands from across the landscape for grand occasions. Think of it as a prehistoric festival ground, a combination of sacred temple and social superglue. These gatherings served a constellation of vital purposes that went far beyond the spiritual. For groups that spent most of the year scattered and mobile, coming together at a fixed, awe-inspiring location was a powerful reaffirmation of shared identity. It reinforced social bonds, allowing distant cousins to reconnect, alliances to be strengthened, and stories to be exchanged. In a world without writing or roads, this was the internet of its day, a critical node for the flow of information. People could share knowledge about the movements of game herds, the location of fresh water sources, or the discovery of new flint quarries. It was also a venue for navigating the most fundamental aspects of human life, facilitating the exchange of potential marriage partners between groups, which would prevent inbreeding and weave a wider social safety net. And at the heart of it all were the rituals themselves. We can only speculate on their precise nature, but the themes carved into the pillars give us clues. Ceremonies here likely addressed the universal anxieties of a hunter-gatherer existence, appeals for successful hunts and bountiful foraging grounds, rites to honor the spirits of the animals they depended on, or rituals marking life transitions like coming of age. By performing these acts together in such a potent space, the community transformed individual hope into collective certainty. This is the profound social innovation Göbekli Tepe represents. The builders created something entirely new, a fixed anchor point in a nomadic world. They built a shared home for the spirit long before they built permanent homes for the body. Maintaining this site, organizing the feasts, and orchestrating the gatherings required a new level of permanent organization, a core group perhaps tasked with its upkeep and the planning of events. This very need to manage a sacred center may have planted the first seeds of settled life, creating a territorial claim and a reason for people to remain closer to this powerful place, slowly tilting the balance from wandering to putting down roots. The temple did not arise from a settled society, it created the conditions for one to begin. But then, the builders did something that seems utterly counterintuitive. After centuries of use, they did not simply walk away from their masterpiece. Instead, they performed a final, deliberate act, one that ensured its survival but sealed its fate. Around 8,000 years before the Common Era, the people of Göbekli Tepe began to bury their own temple. They did not just let dust gather. They carried hundreds of tons of soil, stone rubble, and debris from their own feasts, and they carefully, systematically backfilled every one of those magnificent stone circles. They entombed their own creation. This was not an act of destruction or vandalism. The fill was placed with care, preserving the upright pillars and protecting the intricate carvings from the elements. In fact, this burial is the very reason we can see the carvings so clearly today. It shielded them from 10,000 years of wind and rain. So why do it? Why invest over 1,000 years of collective effort into a sacred space, only to deliberately hide it from the world? This is one of the site's greatest mysteries, and the answer may be a key to understanding a monumental shift in the human story. One compelling theory is that this was a ritual decommissioning. For these communities, the enclosures may have been alive with spiritual presence. You could not simply abandon such a powerful place. To respectfully retire it, to put it to rest, required a formal, ceremonial act. Filling it in might have been the proper way to close a sacred chapter, to honor the old gods or ancestors as a new era dawned. Another possibility is that it was an act of profound preservation. As beliefs and social structures evolved, perhaps with the full adoption of agriculture taking hold, the old symbols and the hunter-gatherer world they represented became sacred relics of a passing age. Burying the temple could have been a way to protect it from being defaced or forgotten by future generations who no longer understood its original meaning. It was hidden to save it. Some researchers see the burial as a direct marker of that cultural revolution. The temple was the ultimate symbol of the old way of life, a world of wild animals and nomadic gathering. The new world was one of domesticated plants, settled villages, and a different relationship with the land. By entombing Göbekli Tepe, the people may have been making a conscious break with their past, literally covering up the old cosmology as they stepped into a new identity. The animal bone fragments in the fill add a poignant layer. They are not just trash, they are the remains of the final, great feasts. It is as if the community gathered one last time, celebrated the old ways, and then performed the ultimate act of closure. The burial was not an ending born of neglect, but a conscious, ceremonial finale. In this light, the filled enclosures are not a tomb, but a time capsule, a message deliberately sealed by its creators. The message might have been, "Remember us," or it might have been, "Our work here is done." Either way, this final act transforms Göbekli Tepe from a mere archaeological site into a profound statement, a conscious closing of the very first chapter of monumental human history. This brings us to a connection that cannot be ignored. Göbekli Tepe sits on the very northern edge of the Fertile Crescent, that legendary arc of land stretching from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, known as the cradle of agriculture. Its location here is almost certainly not an accident. It places the temple at the precise geographic and chronological epicenter of humanity's greatest transition. The so-called Cathedral first theory takes this coincidence and turns it into a compelling cause and effect story. Think about the sheer scale of the operation. To build these circles, you needed a large, temporary workforce drawn from across the region. To hold the rituals and feasts, you needed to feed hundreds or thousands of celebrants, not just once, but season after season for generations. The wild bounty of the hills, the gazelle herds and scattered stands of wild wheat, would have been quickly exhausted by such concentrated demand. The very success of their spiritual project created a monumental logistical crisis. How do you feed a temple? The constant pressure to provision these grand gatherings may have been the catalyst that changed everything. It would have incentivized a shift from simply collecting food to actively managing it. Instead of just gathering wild einkorn wheat, people might have started to deliberately scatter its seeds in cleared areas, tending and protecting the plots to ensure a reliable harvest for the next gathering. Instead of solely hunting wild sheep and goats, they might have begun to corral and manage herds, ensuring a steady supply of meat for the feasts. What began as a solution to a practical problem, feeding the sacred center, slowly evolved into a new way of life. The temple did not just appear before farming, it may have actively invented the need for it. In this light, the Neolithic revolution, that shift from foraging to farming that shaped our entire world, was not sparked by a lone genius with a seed. It was likely a communal innovation, born from the collective desire to sustain something magnificent they had built together. The spiritual ambition to create Göbekli Tepe presented a puzzle, and agriculture emerged as the solution. This makes the site far more than an ancient wonder. It positions it as the unsung catalyst for the single most important transformation in human history. The drive to gather for meaning did not just give us our first temple, it may have given us our first farms, setting humanity irrevocably on the path to the modern world. Göbekli Tepe does not fit into any familiar category. To grasp its true singularity, we need to glance at the world that existed alongside it. In the same broad region and era, other remarkable places were taking shape. Jericho, for instance, is famous for its massive stone fortifications and a towering structure within its walls, evidence of a settled community concerned with defense and social order. Çatalhöyük, a bit later, was an astonishingly dense settlement of mud brick houses, its walls adorned with vibrant murals of hunting scenes and abstract patterns. These were profound achievements, but they represent a different kind of human endeavor. They were, first and foremost, places of dwelling. They were about community living, about homes, workshops, and the rhythms of daily life. Göbekli Tepe stands in stark contrast. In its earliest and most profound phases, archaeologists have found none of that. There are no foundations for houses, no central hearths for family cooking, no accumulated trash middens filled with the debris of everyday existence. The material left behind tells a different story, one of periodic, large-scale feasting and meticulous stonework. This was not a town, it was a destination. A purely ceremonial complex conceived on a scale that dwarfs anything else from its time. Even when we look at the most iconic ancient sites from later millennia, the comparison is humbling. The great stone circles of Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain are a masterpiece of engineering and astronomy, but their main construction phases began around 5,000 years ago, a full 4,500 years after the first rings were raised at Göbekli Tepe. That gap in time is almost impossible to comprehend. It is longer than the entire span from the pyramids of Giza to the present day. This temporal solitude places the Turkish hilltop in a class by itself. It is the world's first known mega-structure, and it was built by people who had not yet committed to farming. This fact alone forces a global re-evaluation. For over a century, the story of cultural evolution was one of slow, incremental progress, a gradual accumulation of skills leading from simple tools to complex societies. Göbekli Tepe erupts into that timeline like a sudden leap, a proof of concept that hunter-gatherer societies were capable of social and spiritual complexity we never attributed to them. It stands as a monumental question mark in the archaeological record, challenging us to look anew at other prehistoric sites around the world. Could there be similar yet undiscovered cult centers hidden beneath hills or forests elsewhere, built by people we have underestimated? The silent stones of Göbekli Tepe do not just tell their own story. They compel us to reconsider all the old stories, wondering what else we have missed about the profound and early human desire to build meaning into the world. The silent stones do not speak a language we can hear, but modern science has given us the tools to listen. Unraveling the secrets of Göbekli Tepe is a detective story, one where the evidence is measured in millimeters and millennia. The first and most fundamental tool is stratigraphy, the meticulous study of soil layers. Imagine the site as a giant, layered cake. Each stratum represents a different moment in time, deposited in sequence. By carefully excavating and documenting these layers, archaeologists can read the story written in the dirt. They can see where a floor was laid, where a pillar was set, and crucially, where the later fill was intentionally brought in to bury the entire complex. This provides the relative timeline, the order of events that tells us construction came first, use came second, and a deliberate burial was the final chapter. To anchor that sequence in real years, scientists turn to radiocarbon dating. This technique analyzes the decay of radioactive carbon atoms in organic materials left behind by the builders. A piece of charcoal from an ancient cooking hearth, a fragment of bone from a ritual feast, these are time capsules. By measuring the remaining carbon-14, researchers can calculate how long ago that organism lived. Thousands of such samples from Göbekli Tepe have converged on a stunningly precise window, placing the main construction phase between 9,600 and 8,000 years before the Common Era. This number is not a guess, it is a statistical anchor point, the scientific bedrock upon which the site's revolutionary status is built. The story continues with the smallest of clues, the flint tools littering the site. Use-ware analysis is a microscopic investigation. By studying the tiny scratches, polishes, and edge damages on these stone blades under high-powered microscopes, specialists can determine exactly what they were used for. The patterns on tools from Göbekli Tepe are clear. They show the distinctive marks of working soft stone like limestone. Other tools bear the evidence of cutting and scraping plants. This tells us not just what tasks were performed, but that labor was specialized with different tools and likely different people dedicated to carving the monumental pillars and processing the food for the great feasts. Then there are the bones themselves, tens of thousands of fragments. Zooarchaeology transforms this refuse into a detailed menu of the past. By identifying the species, the age of the animals, and the cut marks on the bones, researchers can reconstruct the diet and hunting practices. The overwhelming dominance of wild gazelle, aurochs, and sheep confirms the pre-agricultural lifestyle. The selective nature of the bones, often from the meatiest parts of the animals, points to large-scale, organized feasting rather than everyday domestic meals. This is the physical proof of the grand gatherings that define the site's purpose. Perhaps most exciting are the techniques that allow us to see without digging. Geomagnetic surveys and ground-penetrating radar have been swept across the hilltop. These tools detect subtle variations in the Earth's magnetic field or reflect radio waves to reveal buried structures. The resulting maps are astonishing, showing the clear, circular outlines of at least 20 more potential enclosures still hidden beneath the soil. This reveals Göbekli Tepe not as a single temple, but as a vast ritual complex, a sacred landscape whose full scale we are only beginning to comprehend. Each of these methods, from the trowel in the trench to the satellite in the sky, adds a single pixel to the emerging picture. Together, they transform piles of stone and soil into the dynamic story of a sophisticated society, one that mastered its environment not merely for survival, but for a purpose that reached toward something beyond, a drive for transcendence written into the very earth. A site of such staggering age and complexity was bound to spark the wildest of imaginations. In the void of a complete historical record, dramatic stories rush in to fill the silence. Some look at the precise placement of the massive pillars and see the hand of an ancient, advanced civilization, perhaps survivors from the mythical lost continent of Atlantis, imparting forgotten knowledge. Others gaze at the intricate carvings and propose an even more extraterrestrial explanation, suggesting that such sophistication must have come from visitors from the stars. There are narratives that tie the site's burial to earth-shattering cataclysms, like a comet impact that plunged the world into a mini ice age, or to the Great Flood myths that echo across countless cultures. These are compelling tales, the stuff of blockbuster films, but they share a common flaw. They are not supported by the physical evidence unearthed from the hill itself. The story told by the dirt and stone is far more grounded, and in its own way far more extraordinary. Every single tool recovered from the earliest layers at Göbekli Tepe is made of chipped flint or carved bone, the definitive toolkit of the Neolithic era. There are no mysterious alloys, no inexplicable technologies, just the simple, brilliant application of human ingenuity to the materials at hand. The construction methods, while awe-inspiring in their scale, are well within the realm of human capability. We know from experimental archaeology that using wooden rollers, woven rope ramps, and the coordinated power of large groups, moving and erecting these multi-ton pillars was a monumental but achievable task. It required not alien blueprints, but exceptional social organization, patience, and a shared vision that spanned generations. Similarly, the climatic shifts of that era, while significant, were not sudden, single-day disasters. The changes were gradual, unfolding over centuries, giving societies time to adapt and respond. The deliberate burial of the site appears as a careful, ritual act, not a panicked response to a tsunami of mud. To credit these achievements to outside forces, whether ancient astronauts or sunken continents, is to do a profound disservice to our ancestors. It robs them of their agency and their genius. The real, evidence-backed narrative is infinitely more revolutionary. It tells us that small bands of hunter-gatherers, through the power of collective belief and stunning social cooperation, were capable of conceiving and executing the world's first monumental architecture. This story does not diminish Göbekli Tepe by making it mundane. It elevates the entirety of early human history. It places the spark of civilization not in the hands of gods or aliens, but firmly in the hands of people who looked at a bare hill and saw a cathedral, and then worked together for centuries to make that vision a stone reality. That truth of human potential realized through shared purpose is the site's most enduring and meaningful lesson. The layout of Göbekli Tepe is a puzzle waiting to be read. Each stone circle is not an isolated chapel but part of a grand, intentional design, a spatial blueprint that may map an entire cosmology. Look at the most completely excavated structure, known as Enclosure D. Its geometry is precise and purposeful. A perfect ring of 12 massive T-shaped pillars surrounds a central pair of even more colossal monoliths, standing like sovereigns before their court. This hierarchy in stone is almost certainly a hierarchy in belief. The central pillars, towering and covered in the most elaborate carvings, likely represent supreme beings, powerful ancestors, or the most revered figures in their spiritual world. The surrounding ring of pillars, each slightly smaller and all facing inward, could represent the community itself, a permanent gathering of the people or their clan totems, forever oriented toward the sacred center. This transforms the enclosure from a building into a ritual snapshot, a frozen moment of congregation. The arrangement suggests a profound concept that the architecture itself was a participatory act. By entering the circle and moving among these stone figures, an individual was not just visiting a temple, they were stepping into a model of their universe, taking their place within a cosmic order. This idea grows even more compelling when we consider the sky above. Some researchers studying the site have proposed that certain sight lines and orientations might have astronomical significance. For instance, a gap between two central pillars in one enclosure could frame the rising of a specific star like Sirius or mark the solstice sunrise. If true, this would weave the cyclical, predictable motions of the heavens directly into the fabric of their sacred space. A ceremony performed at dawn on the longest day of the year would then align the community, the temple, and the cosmos into a single, harmonious event. This potential integration of earth and sky points to the grandest interpretation of all. The entire complex of Göbekli Tepe, with its multiple rings positioned across the hilltop, may have been designed as a three-dimensional map of reality. The hill itself could represent a sacred mountain, an axis mundi linking different realms. The enclosures, perhaps built in sequence over centuries, might chart a spiritual journey or chronicle a creation myth. In this view, the site was a sacred microcosm, a place where the spiritual, human, and natural worlds were understood to physically converge. To understand this layout is to begin deciphering not just what these people built, but how they thought. It reveals a mind that sought to find and fix order in the chaos of existence, to carve their understanding of life, death, and the stars into the very ground they walked on. Their temple was their universe in miniature, and to gather within it was to affirm their place at the heart of everything. The stone circles held another secret, one you could not see but could feel in your very bones. Recent studies have introduced a fascinating sensory dimension to Göbekli Tepe, the dimension of sound. Researchers examining the site have noted something remarkable about the circular enclosures. Their hard, reflective limestone surfaces and their precise circular shape create unique acoustic properties. If you stood in the center of one of these rings and clapped your hands or beat a drum, the sound would not simply disappear into the air. It would bounce off the surrounding pillars, creating reverberations, echoes, and a kind of resonant hum that would fill the entire space. This acoustic effect transforms our understanding of the rituals that took place here. Chanting, rhythmic drumming, or the stomping of feet during a ceremony would not just be heard, they would be physically felt, washing over participants in waves of sound. This sonic environment could have had a profound psychological impact. In many cultural traditions, sustained rhythmic sound is used as a tool to focus the mind, to unite a group's heartbeat and breath, and in some practices, to facilitate shifts in awareness or meditative states. The architecture itself may have been designed to amplify this effect, using the physics of sound to deepen the spiritual experience. This idea moves beyond speculation. It is part of a growing scientific field called acoustic archaeology, which examines how ancient builders intentionally shaped spaces for sonic experience. If the acoustic properties of Göbekli Tepe were even partially intentional, it means the builders were not just master stoneworkers and visual artists. They were sophisticated designers of multi-sensory ritual. They understood that to create a truly transformative sacred space, you had to engage more than just the eyes. You had to envelop the community in sound, to use vibration to blur the line between the individual and the group, between the physical present and the spiritual realm. This hypothesis adds a stunning layer of depth to the site's purpose. It suggests the ceremonies here were immersive, total experiences. The flicker of firelight on the carved animals, the smell of roasting meat from the great feasts, and now the overwhelming, resonant sound filling the stone circle would have combined to create a powerful, unforgettable event. This was not passive observation, it was active, embodied participation. The very stones shaped by human hands may have been engineered to sing back to them, to turn their collective voice into something greater than the sum of its parts, a tangible bridge to the world of their ancestors and their gods. The logistics behind those pillars reveal a society of masterful organizers. Moving a 20-ton block of limestone from a quarry to the hilltop and then lifting it upright was a puzzle solved with nothing but ingenuity and coordinated effort. Researchers through experimental archaeology have recreated the most plausible methods. First, at the quarry, stoneworkers using antler picks and stone mauls would have painstakingly undercut a pillar from the bedrock. Once free, it was likely loaded onto a wooden sledge. This sledge would then have been pulled across a path of wooden rollers, tree trunks laid side by teams of people hauling on ropes made from twisted plant fibers. The final challenge, setting the pillar vertically into its socket in the bedrock floor, may have involved an earthen ramp. The pillar would be dragged up the ramp and tipped into its prepared hole, with the ramp material then removed to let it settle into place. This was not a feat of brute strength alone, but a symphony of precise, synchronized labor. Every step required different specialists, quarrymen who understood the stone, rope makers, log rollers, and the teams of pullers who had to heave in perfect unison to inch the colossal weight forward. This level of coordination implies a social breakthrough, the emergence of a project manager, a respected individual or council with the authority to direct labor, allocate resources, and maintain the vision across seasons, perhaps even across generations. The workforce was not building homes or storehouses. They were investing immense effort into a purely spiritual monument. This tells us their society had achieved something profound, a level of food security through highly efficient foraging that allowed them to support non-productive workers during construction periods. The people could be spared from the daily hunt because the community could feed them. Göbekli Tepe, therefore, is far more than a collection of stones. It is the physical manifestation of social capital, a frozen moment of breathtaking cooperation. It proves these early people had mastered the foundational skill of civilization itself, the ability to unite individual effort into a grand, long-term communal vision, subordinating immediate needs to a shared dream carved in stone. The world these builders inhabited was a world emerging from deep cold. Around 9,600 years before the Common Era, the last great ice age had recently retreated, giving way to a warmer, wetter period known as the early Holocene. This was not the arid, rocky landscape of modern southeastern Turkey. It was a lush parkland, a mosaic of open grasslands dotted with groves of oak and pistachio trees, a savanna teeming with life. Massive herds of wild gazelle migrated across the plains, while formidable aurochs, the wild ancestors of cattle, grazed in the meadows. The hills were rich with wild cereals like einkorn, wheat, and barley, their seeds providing a nutritious and abundant food source. This ecological wealth is a critical piece of the puzzle. Such a stable, resource-rich environment provided the essential foundation, the calorie surplus that allowed for spare time and energy. When your basic needs are met relatively easily by the land's bounty, you gain the capacity to dream beyond the next meal, to invest labor in projects that feed the spirit rather than just the body. This was the fertile ground, both literally and figuratively, from which Göbekli Tepe could grow. Yet this world was not static, it was a world in profound transition. The preceding millennium had endured a final, bitter cold snap known as the Younger Dryas, a sudden return to glacial conditions that stressed ecosystems and the human communities that relied on them. As the climate warmed again, forests expanded, animal migration patterns shifted, and the very fabric of the familiar world was being rewoven. In this context of environmental flux, the human impulse behind Göbekli Tepe takes on a powerful new dimension. Some researchers suggest the monumental construction was not just a celebration of abundance, but a profound cultural response to instability. When the world around you is changing in unpredictable ways, how do you create a sense of security, of order? You might build it by erecting these colossal, permanent stones in precise, meaningful arrangements. The builders were doing more than creating a temple. They were imposing a symbolic anchor onto the landscape. They were crafting a fixed point of meaning in a shifting world, a place where the community could gather to reaffirm their shared identity and their relationship with the forces of nature. The rituals performed there, likely appealing to the spirits of the animals and the cycles of the seasons, can be seen as an attempt to negotiate with a changing environment, to seek stability through ceremony and collective memory. In this light, Göbekli Tepe stands as a testament to human resilience and creativity in the face of change, a monumental declaration that even in a world in flux, we can create places of enduring significance. The carvings on the pillars were more than art, they were a revolutionary form of technology. In a world without a single written word, how does a society safeguard its most vital knowledge? How do you ensure that the stories of creation, the names of ancestors, and the rules of the community are not lost with the passing of each elder? Göbekli Tepe presents a brilliant solution, a breakthrough in information storage that predates the alphabet by millennia. The site functioned as a kind of external hard drive, a permanent library carved from limestone. Think of the standardized T-shaped pillars, each one a recurring symbol understood by everyone who visited. They were not just statues, they were durable data points. The elaborate menagerie of animals across the different enclosures likely served as a complex symbolic code. A fox might not just represent a fox, it could encode a specific clan's origin story. A pattern of snakes might chart a celestial event or a moral teaching. The very layout of the circles, with their central pillars and surrounding rings, could map an entire cosmology, a physical diagram of how the people believed the world was structured. This system of symbolic storage changed everything. Before this, all cultural knowledge lived exclusively in human memory, passed down through songs, stories, and rituals. This oral tradition is fluid and can shift with each telling, but by etching their core beliefs into the very architecture of a sacred center, the builders did something extraordinary. They externalized their memory. They took the knowledge from inside their minds and gave it a permanent, unchanging home in the world. This transformed culture from something fragile and personal into something solid and communal. The temple became a durable reference point. A young person could come to the site and, by learning the meaning of the symbols, access generations of accumulated wisdom. A person from a distant band could arrive and immediately recognize the shared language of forms, understanding their place within a larger social and spiritual network. This innovation stabilized their identity. It made their belief system resilient, less vulnerable to the slow drift of myth over time. In essence, Göbekli Tepe was the world's first monument to collective memory. This stone library enabled the preservation and standardization of a complex idea system across a wide geographic area, uniting scattered populations under a common symbolic banner. That shared identity, etched in stone, was the crucial social glue that allowed for larger, more cooperative societies to form. Long before we wrote on clay tablets, we were writing our dreams onto the landscape itself, creating a testament meant to outlast the fleeting lives of its creators. That revolutionary idea of a sacred center did not vanish when the last stone circle was buried. The concepts forged at Göbekli Tepe, the very architecture of belief, appear to have echoed through the ages, their influence rippling across the ancient world in subtle but profound ways. Take the iconic T-shaped pillar that stylized human form. Centuries after Göbekli Tepe was sealed, we find similar T-shaped stone monuments, called stelae, erected at other Neolithic sites across the region. While often smaller, they carry the same symbolic silhouette, a ghost of that original form persisting in cultural memory. The powerful animal symbolism carved so meticulously into the limestone also finds a vibrant afterlife. At Çatalhöyük, that famous settled town that flourished centuries later, the walls of homes are adorned with stunning murals and plaster reliefs of wild bulls, leopards, and vultures. This was not simple decoration. It was a continuation of a symbolic language where potent animals represented forces, deities, or clan identities, a visual vocabulary that seems deeply rooted in the older tradition established on the hill. These motifs even weave their way into the foundational mythologies of later, literate civilizations. The epic tales of Mesopotamia and Anatolia are populated by heroic confrontations with wild bulls, lion-headed storm gods, and sacred serpents, suggesting these images held a power that transcended any single culture, their origins perhaps stretching back to a shared prehistoric past. Perhaps the most significant legacy is not a shape or a symbol, but a social model. Göbekli Tepe pioneered the concept of the regional cult center, a single, awe-inspiring location that drew in a dispersed population for collective ritual. This blueprint became one of the most enduring patterns in human history. We see it reimagined millennia later in the stepped ziggurats of Mesopotamia, artificial mountains where priests communed with the gods, visible for miles across the flat plain. We see it in the great temple complexes of Egypt, where pharaohs served as intermediaries, and in the sacred acropolises of classical Greece, where city-states gathered to honor their deities. Each of these later centers served a similar core function. They were a fixed point of spiritual gravity around which a society could orient itself, a physical anchor for shared identity and cosmic order. This reveals a fundamental truth about our species. The act of dedicating immense resources, of moving mountains of stone to create something with no practical purpose other than meaning, is not a luxury that comes after civilization is built. It appears to be the foundational act itself. Göbekli Tepe stands as the profound prototype for this impulse. While we cannot draw a direct, unbroken line of influence, cultures rise and fall, ideas transform. The site serves as a stunning proof of concept. It demonstrates that the drive to gather, to make meaning visible and permanent, is a primal human force. This force is what can mobilize hunter-gatherers to become builders, and what can inspire farmers to become architects of pyramids and cathedrals. The ultimate legacy of those first stone circles is the enduring idea that what we choose to build together, the monuments we raise to our deepest beliefs, ultimately defines who we are as a people. It suggests that civilization begins not with a brick, but with a shared dream made stone. The stones have given us a breathtaking outline, but the details of the life that filled this place remain just out of reach. We can see the stage, but the script of the rituals performed here is lost to time. What specific ceremonies unfolded within these rings under the vast Anatolian sky? Were they solemn processions between the pillars, or ecstatic dances fueled by rhythmic sound? Did they involve offerings, perhaps the very animals whose images watch from the walls? The nature of the belief system itself is a profound mystery. Were the T-shaped pillars a pantheon of distinct deities, or representations of a single concept manifest in many forms? The social hierarchy is equally opaque. Who were the visionary individuals who conceived this project and commanded the respect to see it through generations? Were they shamans, revered elders, or the heads of powerful family lines? These are the intimate human questions that the monumental stones have not yet answered. This search for answers is far from over. To date, less than 10% of the estimated total area of Göbekli Tepe has been carefully excavated. The site is not a museum frozen in time, it is an active archaeological frontier. Current work, led by the Turkish Ministry of Culture and Tourism, prioritizes a delicate balance. Every season involves meticulous conservation to protect the exposed stones from the elements, and incredibly detailed documentation using laser scanning and photogrammetry to create perfect digital records of every carving and contour. The long-term goal, however, is discovery. Ground-penetrating radar maps continue to reveal the tantalizing outlines of perhaps 20 more monumental enclosures still hidden beneath the soil, each one a potential vault of new information. The focus is also expanding outward beyond the hilltop itself. Researchers are now surveying the surrounding landscape, searching for the missing pieces of the logistical puzzle. Where exactly were the permanent or seasonal work camps that housed the builders? Can we find the ancillary quarries or the paths used to transport the megaliths? Most importantly, are there smaller, contemporary satellite sites, villages, or gathering places that formed the supporting network for this ceremonial hub? Finding these would be a revolutionary step. It would allow archaeologists to move beyond the spectacular central complex and finally glimpse the everyday world of the people, their homes, their tools, and their family lives. This holistic view is key to understanding the society in full, not just its most breathtaking achievement. Every new trowel of earth turned at Göbekli Tepe holds the potential for a revelation that could refine or even radically alter the story we are piecing together. A single new carving, a unique arrangement of artifacts, or the discovery of a supporting settlement could shed light on those unanswered questions about ritual, leadership, and daily life. This site remains one of the most active and exciting windows into humanity's deep past, a constant reminder that our history is not a closed book, but a narrative still being written, one careful excavation at a time. The silent stones of Göbekli Tepe ask a question that reaches far beyond archaeology. What does this place, built by hunter-gatherers for a purpose beyond survival, fundamentally tell us about who we are? For generations, a materialist view of history has dominated, a logical narrative where progress is driven by practical necessity. First, we secure food and shelter. Then, with those basic needs met, we can afford the luxury of art, religion, and philosophy. Civilization, in this view, is built on a foundation of full stomachs. Göbekli Tepe turns that assumption inside out. Here, the most monumental project of its age was undertaken by people who had not yet secured a reliable food supply through farming. Their greatest investment of labor and resources was not in granaries or houses, but in a temple. This forces a radical reconsideration of human nature itself. It presents compelling evidence that the defining trait of our species, the sapiens in Homo sapiens, is not merely our intelligence for tool making, but our profound capacity for symbolic thought, collective imagination, and the relentless pursuit of meaning. The drive to create art, to conceptualize the sacred, to gather for shared ritual and story, appears to be not a cultural add-on that comes after stability, but a primary evolutionary force, as fundamental to our makeup as the drive to eat or seek shelter. This site suggests that community and cosmology were not leisurely inventions born from surplus. They were vital necessities, the very social glue that forged the cohesion required for survival and monumental innovation. Building those stone circles required a shared belief system so powerful it could coordinate the labor of hundreds across generations. That belief system, that shared meaning, was the prerequisite for the project, not ITS Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. In essence, Göbekli Tepe argues that we are, at our core, not just tool makers but meaning makers. Our first great invention may not have been the plow or the wheel, but the temple, a dedicated space to explore the big questions of existence, to connect with something larger than ourselves, and to solidify the bonds of community through shared awe. This ancient hilltop stands as a testament to the idea that what makes us human is not just our ability to manipulate our environment, but our innate need to understand our place within it, and to build together the stories that make that understanding permanent. Protecting a legacy that has survived since the last ice age is a responsibility as delicate as the carvings themselves. For 12,000 years, the stone circles of Göbekli Tepe rested in a perfect, silent equilibrium, shielded from the elements by the very earth that buried them. The moment archaeologists began to remove that protective fill, they initiated a new and urgent chapter, one of modern guardianship. Exposing these ancient limestone surfaces to the open air introduced a cascade of new threats. The same sun, wind, and rain that define the landscape now pose a relentless risk to the intricate animal reliefs and the very integrity of the pillars. Limestone is a porous material, absorbing moisture that can freeze and expand in winter, causing microscopic cracks that, over years, lead to flaking and erosion. The delicate peck marks left by flint tools, the very texture of their artistry, are vulnerable to being slowly smoothed away by the elements. This is the fundamental paradox of discovery. To uncover is to endanger, and so the work of preservation must begin the instant the past is revealed. Alongside the environmental challenge comes the human one, the immense and growing interest from around the world. Tourism is a double-edged tool. It generates vital support for ongoing research and brings global attention to humanity's shared heritage, allowing millions to stand in awe before these stones. Yet, every visitor, however careful, introduces subtle pressures, from the vibration of footsteps to the cumulative effect of humidity from breath and touch. Managing this access is a constant balancing act between sharing wonder and preventing wear. The solution has been both innovative and respectful. A sweeping, state-of-the-art protective canopy now arches over the main excavated enclosures. Its design is intentionally low profile, mimicking the gentle silhouette of the original hill, so as not to dominate the sacred landscape. This is not just a roof, it is a climate regulation system, shielding the stones from direct rainfall and harsh sunlight while allowing air to circulate, stabilizing the microenvironment around the ancient pillars. Beneath this shelter, the work of conservation is continuous and meticulous. Scientists employ non-invasive technologies to monitor the stone's health, using high-resolution 3D scanners to create digital baselines. They can track minuscule changes in the surface over time, measuring the pace of erosion down to a fraction of a millimeter. This data informs gentle cleaning methods and consolidation treatments, where specially formulated compounds are carefully applied to strengthen the stone without altering its appearance. The goal is never to restore or recreate, but to stabilize, to pause time for as long as science allows. These efforts represent a profound dialogue across millennia. The same human drive for permanence that motivated the builders now motivates their stewards. We are applying our most advanced understanding of material science and environmental engineering to safeguard their ancient achievement. This global commitment, funded and supported by international bodies, is itself a testament to the site's perceived value. Göbekli Tepe has transcended its local origins to become a chapter in the story of all humankind, a legacy that compels us to act. Our role is no longer that of mere discoverers, but of caretakers for a message in stone, ensuring that its whispers from the dawn of time remain audible for generations yet to come. That global effort to preserve the site mirrors a broader cultural phenomenon, one unfolding far beyond the excavation trenches. Göbekli Tepe has leapt from the pages of academic journals into the very heart of our global imagination. You can find its enigmatic pillars featured in best-selling novels, its name whispered in popular documentaries, and its form recreated in expansive video game worlds. In these stories, it often serves as the ultimate symbol of ancient, forgotten wisdom, a puzzle left behind by a vanished people. This widespread fascination is a powerful and positive force. It ignites a passion for history in millions, translating directly into public support and funding that enables the meticulous science we rely on. Yet this very popularity carries a subtle risk, the temptation to reduce a profoundly human story into a simplistic mystery box, a place where answers are less important than the thrill of the unknown. The true challenge for anyone sharing this story is to harness that raw curiosity and steer it toward a deeper appreciation. We must guide the wonder not just toward the stones, but toward the understanding of how we know what we know, the patient process of archaeology itself. Göbekli Tepe serves as a perfect gateway into the vast expanse of prehistory. It makes a distant, abstract time feel immediate and tangible. When a viewer sees those carvings or learns of the labor involved, they are not just learning about hunter-gatherers, they are connecting with the ingenuity, the cooperation, and the spiritual yearning of people fundamentally like us. This public engagement achieves something remarkable in the modern age. Just as the site likely created a shared point of reference for scattered bands 12,000 years ago, uniting them in a common symbolic language, today it creates a shared story for a global audience. It becomes a cultural touchstone that transcends borders, inviting everyone to marvel at the depth and creativity of the human journey. This shared wonder, sparked by a hilltop in Turkey, reminds us that our drive to seek meaning and build community is the most enduring legacy of all. A story that continues to be written with every new visitor who looks upon those silent, watchful stones and feels the pull of a deep, collective past. Göbekli Tepe was never meant to stand alone. The true scale of this cultural revolution is only now coming into focus, not from a single hilltop, but from an entire region whispering with similar stones. Recent surveys and excavations across southeastern Turkey have begun to map a constellation of sites, places with names like Karahan Tepe, Sefer Tepe, and Tashli Tepe. At each location, archaeologists are finding the unmistakable signature of that distant era, T-shaped limestone pillars and familiar carvings of wild animals. These sites are often smaller, less monumental than their famous predecessor, but their existence changes the entire narrative. Göbekli Tepe was not a solitary, inexplicable miracle. It was likely the crowning achievement, the central hub, within a far wider network of belief and gathering. This emerging picture is of a vibrant, interconnected cultural zone, a pre-agricultural society with a shared symbolic language stretching across dozens of kilometers. They spoke the same visual dialect, carving foxes, snakes, and boars into their monoliths, suggesting a common cosmology united these scattered communities. This network concept helps solve a practical mystery of Göbekli Tepe itself. How did the builders sustain the labor force for such a colossal project? The answer may lie in this regional system. Different communities, perhaps identifying with different animal totems, could have been responsible for constructing or maintaining specific enclosures or for provisioning the grand feasts at the central site. It transforms the story from a single group's obsession into a collaborative, regional endeavor, a sacred project that wove multiple bands into a larger social fabric. The variations between sites are as telling as their similarities. Karahan Tepe, for example, presents a fascinating contrast. While it features the iconic T-pillars, some arranged in a phallic-like formation that suggests distinct rituals, it also shows clearer evidence of residential structures, water management channels, and storage facilities. This indicates a site with a more permanent domestic footprint alongside its ceremonial role. It might have been a village with its own shrine, or a seasonal settlement that supported the activities at the larger cult center. This diversity hints at a sophisticated hierarchy within the network. Göbekli Tepe, with its sheer scale and concentration of artistry, likely held the supreme spiritual significance. The surrounding Tepe sites could have served as local gathering points for individual clans, way stations for pilgrims journeying to the main center, or specialized locations for specific rites of passage or seasonal ceremonies. Studying this network is like finding the first chapters of a lost book. It allows us to move beyond the awe-inspiring climax and understand the everyday mechanics of this spiritual civilization. How was authority distributed across this landscape? Did a priestly class rotate between sites, or did each community have its own custodians? How did the revolutionary ideas born at Göbekli Tepe, the symbolic language, the architectural forms spread and adapt as they were adopted by neighboring groups? Ultimately, this regional view may also reveal the network's end. As the climate shifted and the social experiment evolved, this interconnected system of sacred sites may have gradually unraveled. The focus might have slowly decentralized, with communities turning inward, investing more in their local settlements and the new technology of farming. The burial of Göbekli Tepe could mark the final, ceremonial closing of the central node in a network that was already fading, its purpose absorbed into the settled villages that would soon dominate the landscape. Each new Tepe site discovered is not just another ruin, it is a vital piece of a social map, helping us chart the rise, the connections, and the transformation of the world's first known religious civilization. The future of Göbekli Tepe will be written not only with trowels, but with lasers, sequencers, and virtual worlds. Our next leaps in understanding will come from a powerful fusion of advanced technology and interdisciplinary thinking. Imagine a detailed survey of the entire landscape, not from the ground but from the air. Light detection and ranging technology, or LiDAR, can fire millions of laser pulses from an aircraft, penetrating vegetation to create a precise three-dimensional map of the Earth's surface beneath. Applied to the hills and valleys surrounding Göbekli Tepe, this could reveal the faint traces of ancient footpaths, the outlines of undiscovered satellite sites, or the subtle depressions of long-vanished work camps, sketching the full extent of this sacred network without ever breaking the soil. The very dirt under our feet holds microscopic secrets. A revolutionary technique called sediment DNA analysis involves taking core samples from the site's floors and fill. Scientists can then sift this ancient soil for genetic fragments, the minuscule biological echoes of the past. This could detect the ghostly presence of plants that grew there, pollen from long-extinct flowers, or even trace genetic material from the skin cells, hair, or blood of the people who gathered there. Such data could reconstruct the site's environmental microclimate and offer indirect clues about its human users, painting a picture of the living world that surrounded the stone circles. To understand the builders themselves, we look to the chemistry of their bones. While no burials have been found at Göbekli Tepe itself, contemporaneous resting places from the wider region are being studied. Techniques like strontium isotope analysis examine the mineral signatures locked inside tooth, enamel, and bone. The ratio of these isotopes reflects the geology of the land where a person grew up and sourced their food and water. By analyzing remains from individuals, researchers can potentially map their life journeys. Did they live and die near the temple, or were their bones laid to rest far from their birthplace? This could chart the social and geographic reach of the site, revealing whether it drew pilgrims from distant valleys or was maintained by a more local population. Perhaps the most immersive tool on the horizon is virtual reality. Using the immense data from laser scans, photogrammetry, and archaeological records, digital artists and researchers can collaborate to build a fully realized, three-dimensional model of the site as it might have appeared 12,000 years ago. We could one day don a headset and stand within a completed enclosure, with the pillars standing clean and sharp, their carvings freshly pecked and perhaps even painted in vibrant pigments we can only hypothesize. We could witness the simulated play of dawn light through the entrance, or hear a reconstruction of the site's unique acoustics during a ceremony. This is more than a visual aid. It is a new form of experimental archaeology, allowing us to test sightlines, experience scale, and generate questions about ritual movement and perception that flat maps cannot inspire. Ultimately, cracking the code of Göbekli Tepe requires a chorus of voices, not a single discipline. The future lies in deep collaboration. Archaeologists will provide the material evidence. Anthropologists can offer frameworks for understanding ritual and social structure from studies of later cultures. Cognitive scientists might explore how the brain processes symbols and sacred spaces, shedding light on the psychological impact of the architecture. Architects and engineers can analyze the construction techniques to understand the precise knowledge required. Together, they can build a nuanced, multi-faceted model of this pivotal moment. The goal is no longer a single smoking gun, a lone inscription that explains everything. It is about weaving thousands of tiny data points, from a strand of ancient DNA to the orientation of a central pillar, into a richer, more human story of why we first came together to build the impossible, and in doing so, built ourselves. Göbekli Tepe stands as a silent, monumental challenge to the story we tell ourselves about human progress. For generations, the arc of history was drawn as a straight line, a slow and logical climb from simple survival toward complex society. We imagined our ancestors gradually mastering their environment, securing food and shelter, and only then, as a luxury of stability, turning their minds to art, architecture, and the sacred. This temple, built before farming, before cities, and before written language, shatters that orderly timeline. It reveals the leap to civilization not as a cautious, incremental crawl, but as a creative explosion, a sudden and breathtaking ignition of human potential. The catalyst was not full stomachs but full hearts and minds, driven by a collective belief so powerful it could move literal mountains of stone. This forces a profound shift in perspective. We can no longer view the people of 12,000 years ago as primitive strugglers, perpetually on the brink of scarcity. The builders of Göbekli Tepe were visionary architects of their own destiny. They were planners who coordinated labor across generations, artists who encoded a cosmology into limestone, and community builders who forged a shared identity from scattered bands. Their greatest investment was not in practical tools but in a temple, a place dedicated solely to meaning. This suggests something fundamental about our species. The need to create meaning, to build together toward a shared vision, and to connect with something larger than ourselves is not a cultural afterthought. It appears to be woven into the very fabric of what makes us human, a primary force as essential as the drive for food or shelter. Our first great invention may well have been the sacred space itself, the arena where we could collectively explore the great mysteries of existence and solidify the bonds that make society possible. As we reflect on these ancient stones, we are reminded that our history is deeper, more complex, and far more inspiring than we ever imagined. It is a story not of slow inevitability, but of bold leaps of faith and cooperation. The silent circles on that Turkish hilltop continue to speak, urging us to reconsider not just where we came from, but who we are. The journey of discovery is far from over, with new chapters being written with every season of research. If this exploration of our shared past resonated with you, consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries. We would love to hear your thoughts on Göbekli Tepe and what it means to you in the comments below.